Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to discuss tactics that you can use to obscure the true state of your project when things are going badly. Now, maybe you're an honest person and you wouldn't want to do any of these things, but maybe you're a little dishonest. Maybe things are going a little badly and you just need a little more room. And so these are ideas and tactics and philosophies that I have seen people use to obscure project failing.
We're teaching this so we can identify, right?
Yes, yes. If you cannot tell, this is a. Let's talk about how you would do this because you wouldn't want to, but this is a bad thing. Disclaimer there. So the first thing you can do if your project is going badly is move from deliverables to phases. So not I'm going to deliver this functionality at this point. I'm going to deliver phase one at this point, and then phase two, and then phase three, and phase four. Because phase one is a pointer. What's in phase one? Meh. Maybe something that was in phase one just moved to phase two. Now phase one's still on track. It's a way to obscure and hide that you're cutting scope to keep the things on track.
What would be the difference? Give me an example of what a deliverable should look like versus the ambiguousness of a phase.
Let's say there's a project and you are going to have the MVP out, and then you're going to get customer feedback, and then you're going to get put it into production, right? So there's three phases.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe your MVP isn't ready, or maybe you're cutting what the MVP is. And so you just say, well, we're still on track for phase one, even though phase one is now half of the MVP. You've now pushed everything else. You're like, well, we're really not going to do that now until we get the customer feedback. And so customer feedback has now exploded in scope, but that's not really clear because unless somebody's looking down at what's going on, you can report that phase one is still on track because you've moved things out of phase one and into phase two.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this is a classic tactic, and I've seen it many times. It usually works very well for a while. It gets more and more difficult over time because it builds up. Each phase gets progressively larger, which means you end up pushing more and more phases more and more stuff into the future phases, and so it becomes progressively harder to hit those future phases, which makes them progressively push more and more. And eventually, at some point, somebody's going to know, hey, shouldn't we have all this functionality in production by now? And then you say, well, we've moved that to these other phases.
And now we've got 32 phases.
Yeah, and now we've got 32
extend
phases.
the number of phases to make it seem...
Yes. we broke phase two down into 3 parts.
Each with 4 deliverables.
Yeah, each with 4 deliverables. And now phase two was on time, but we've extended the project by 6 phases. The idea is you haven't lied because you've moved from value to reference, to use the programming term. Mm-hmm. You were talking about the values that were going to be released in the specific dates, and now you're talking about the references. And from our philosophy, philosophically, for us, this is the whole idea that, hey, look, if you've got a roadmap and it's more than a month out, it doesn't matter. If you've got planned, like, oh, well, this is going to be in 3 weeks and this is going to be 6 weeks after that, and that's garbage. And having phases it plays into that idea of, hey, there's this roadmap and it's valid, and it allows managers and project people to be disingenuous about what's really going on instead of just admitting that the roadmap was garbage in the first place or the project timeline was garbage.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other things that you've seen out in the field?
Yeah. So that's that's the most misleading and the most managerial of them. The second one thing that you can do is start talking about work instead of outcomes. So instead of saying customers will have this feature on this date, you
Mm-hmm.
say my team worked really hard and we delivered this story, and this story. Do those stories add up to that feature getting in production? They could, they might not. But you now have something to talk about. You're talking about stories, and you're not talking about outcomes. And if the project is behind, you can talk all day about stories because your team is working hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? This isn't a, oh yeah, we're all kicking back on the beach. Your team is working really hard, but it's mostly on the wrong stuff,
Yeah.
or it's other work, or it's who knows what. So you're not really making any progress, but you can talk about the work instead of talking about the outcomes.
This kind of reminds me of conversations around like, look how many points we delivered. Look at our velocity. Our
Yes.
team's velocity is so great here. But if you go back and even if you add up all the points, and true, the velocity is great, like you're talking about, the wrong things are being worked on. So you worked on a huge story, but maybe it didn't provide the value that the customer needed. It was just some other work.
Right, and this is where if you've got developers who are building a framework to do the work instead of doing the work,
Hmm.
it's a classic over engineering thing. It's like, oh well, we're doing all this points. Look at all these points and all this velocity and all these things we
Oh,
delivered,
yeah.
but you haven't actually delivered anything because you ended up building a framework to build the thing that customers want or the outcomes that were expected. And this is again a Weasley way, and people can do this. Just like talking about phases instead of outcomes or deliveries, this is a way, and people don't even realize they're doing it,
Hmm.
but it's a way that you can hide the. If you're being malicious, you could use this to hide it. Most people who are doing this are not being malicious. They don't realize, they don't understand that this is what they're doing.
Right.
Um, and then I feel like there was a third part, but I've lost it. That's coming in phase 3 of the episode.
Nice catch.
Thank you. All right, so we've talked a bit about here's these two ideas of talking about phases, talking about references instead of value, and talking
Hmm.
about work instead of outcomes. And what can you do if you're on a project or you're getting this kind of pushback around it? It's move things back off of phases or refuse to accept that a thing can be named a phase. Phase 1, phase 2, these are meaningless things and stuff can slip. You could have the phase could be instead of phases. You could say, well, I'm not sure about phases. Let's rename it to the deliverable. Right. This is the phase 1
Hmm.
is this. Right. So we're really talking about this. The feature is in the user's hands.
Yeah.
The MVP in the user's hands. When's that happening? That's the phase. It by naming things, it gets rid of the ambiguity, right? Because a pointer is a pointer, and a named object is the name of the object.
It's like speaking the name of the devil to get it out of the body of the person it's possessing. You have to name it instead of letting it
Oh,
be ambiguous. That's how you.
okay. That is not from my cultural references, but I believe you.
You've seen The Exorcist.
I have not.
What? Okay, wait. You've seen The Breakfast Club and I haven't. And I've seen The Exorcist and you haven't. So I say we have to
Yeah, but
go
I
do
don't
some
watch horror
homework.
movies. I
Oh.
have not watched The Exorcist on purpose.
Well, either way, calling out the true thing that for what it is rather than letting
Right,
it be named something ambiguous to mask the
right.
nature.
And to get around people talking about work instead of talking about outcomes, you can actually ask the question, what's the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
The better solution that I found over the years is having demos.
Mm.
If you have a demo and the developer has to get up there and talk about the work that they've delivered, and they can't show anything that anybody cares about, that's the flag of,
Yeah.
hey, you did all this work and you pushed all this code and now you have nothing to show for it, like that, nothing that any of the managerial people in this meeting care about. Again, this is a sunshine policy of sunlight is the best disinfectant, is the sunshine policy, where if people have to go in front of their managers and do a demo, or the leaders, if you have to go in front of the CTO and you have to do a demo, and what you have is that you've built a framework so that next sprint you can build the work, the CTO is going to notice.
Yeah.
If you're just talking about it, it might slip through. But if there's a demo, it's not. And the CTO is going to be like, why didn't you build half of that and then use it to build half of the feature? Right?
Yeah.
It will be very obvious. And so demos provide the sunlight, just like names provide the sunlight. That makes it harder to shift things around.
I like that.
All right. Well, that's all I got for this week. So thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.